G'day all, welcome back to the G-Man Show. Thank you once again for joining me on the internet to talk about the ATO. Now this is a ABC Four Corners in depth. It's called Scammers, Fraudsters and the Tax Officers Missing $50 Billion. Let's jump in. It should be an interesting video to talk through together.
The system is a cornerstone of our society. If we don't have confidence in those who take our money for tax, then we're really in trouble as a country.
The Tax Office is one of the biggest government agencies in Australia. It's also one of the most secretive.
There's a lot that happens behind the closed door of the ATO that isn't open to scrutiny for us as average citizens and taxpayers.
For this episode of Four Corners, I've teamed up with my former colleague from the Australian Financial Review, Neil Chenoweth. He's been tracking the ATO for more than 20 years and the critical flaws in its systems.
If you wanted to design a system that was going to be open to fraud, this is the one that you would choose. It's big money, fast.
Very interesting. Let's also talk about, so this is an article or a video about the tax office having fraud committed against them. But what about the fraud that the ATO committed against the people, especially when it comes to robo-debt? And robo-debt was an automated system that calculated the debt in which it believed that people were overpaid Centrelink. So Centrelink benefits, Social Security, if you're in America, that's what we have here, our welfare. And they were demanding money to be paid back that people weren't even supposed to be paying back, which caused a lot of damage to people, and a lot of people ended themselves over it. And there was no consequence for it. Let's not forget that before they start talking about ATO being victimised.
Together, we expose how more than $50 billion of taxes have gone missing. That's a big number, though.
It's a big number. It's confusing. And something that I personally would like to know the answer to.
And how the agency set up to protect our money is failing, leaving it open to exploitation.
How an organisation as powerful, as well-funded and well-resourced as the ATO can drop the ball so badly blows my mind.
From small-time fraudsters...
Almost was like winning the lottery, but then you kind of know that it's not your money.
...to industrial-scale scammers.
It's almost whack-a-mole. You think you've got one and he's off perpetrating it again.
We ask why the tax office doesn't act, even after repeated warnings.
I have to believe that they said that it was one of the most highly resourced, etc. I'd like to know how many people actually work at the ATO and how they go about focusing their resources on searching for actual fraud as opposed to nickel and diming everybody for $15 and $20 or $100 here and there on your tax return, looking at your tax deductions. Can get audited over smaller things, but they've got $50 billion in scams and fraud schemes happening, and they're focusing on income tax. So it's a matter of thinking, where's the effort being put? Are there even systems in place for them to detect this stuff and to do anything about it?
That is a huge statement that their fraud detection processes were really no better than random selection.
They have certainly been on notice.
We also reveal how the tax office deals with the rich and powerful compared to everyday Australians.
So in a 10-day period, the ATO went from demanding almost $1 million to saying, you know what, don't worry about that.
It does raise some questions about the ATO.
Yep.
As well as the former tax commissioner's historical links to a tax haven.
Surely the checks before such an appointment would say, have you ever been involved in using secrecy jurisdictions?
With scandals piling up, we uncover how the ATO's failures are costing you.
The taxpayers, we're being rorted left, right and centre. I've made a lot of videos recently about this. All the taxes that we pay as citizens, whether it be very high amount of pay-G tax if you're a worker, payroll tax if you have a business, company tax if you're a small to mid-sized business which you can't get out of. You can't offshore tax structure yourself to get out of it like the big boys. We got all the taxes and excises on just about everything we enjoy in life. So where's that money going? So what, $50 billion of it has leaked somewhere, and they don't have the capability or control to either claw it back or stop it from happening in the first place. So I actually do challenge that point that the lady said at the start about it being a very well-sourced and well-funded operation. I think more and more of these departments are relying on technological systems to data match and then try and uncover fraud that way, as opposed to actively investigating it with the human element.
The Australian Taxation Office is under scrutiny for paying out fake GST claims to scammers.
Our story begins in Mildura, a river town in northwest Victoria.
You know, at the end of the day, I don't encourage fraud at all. You've got to say, these people who do this stuff, like, blatantly commit fraud against the government, they've got some massive set of nuts on them, or they're not very smart, either one. It gets huge risk because the whole weight of the ATO can come down on you. I find it incredible. It's interesting to hear these stories.
Somewhere in the vicinity of $1.7 billion has been lost to revenue as a result of this fraud.
It's an unlikely setting for the biggest GST scam in Australian history.
It's been a fair old drive, right? Yeah, pretty isolated.
I still can't really get my head around it being one of the hotspots for this huge fraud. Mildura is not the first place that comes to mind.
The tax office said this was a shocking fraud perpetrated by individuals, then turbocharged on social media.
The ATO is blaming influencers on TikTok for promoting the scam. The tax fraud went viral in mid-2021.
Once discovered.
Yeah, you also got to question the intelligence of the wider public. So you're getting away with defrauding the Australian government, and you are going to post how to do this on a public social media platform. That is amazing. Truly amazing that people have that such a low level of awareness and intelligence.
Discovered, the ATO claimed to have cracked down hard and quickly brought the scam under control.
Operation Protego was launched. That led to a series of raids, and that threat has now been contained.
Some 57,000 people took part in the fraud, and it found willing participants in this irrigation town on the Murray.
Mildura as a town is a beautiful place. It's a place of contrast. We farmed a desert and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar economic powerhouse.
Ali Cupper is the town's deputy mayor, a lawyer, social worker and former member of Victoria's Parliament.
You know, Victoria is a fairly small state, so, you know...
At the same time, we are very isolated, and isolation invariably brings with it a whole set of disadvantages and challenges. I think that poverty and disadvantage are always going to create fertile ground for participation in these sorts of things. You know, if there are people in Mildura who have done the wrong thing, those people deserve to be held accountable.
There's also that, and people also revolting and resisting just the amount of overreach. So they're like, you know what have I got to lose anyway? I can't get ahead in life, so I may as well have a crack. And if I get busted, well, I'll take the chance.
I guess my unanswered question would be, how did it happen?
So tell us, how did this GST scam actually work?
It just takes 3 steps. The first step is that you have to come up with an imaginary business that you would like to run. I mean, it could be a restaurant, it could be a hairdresser, it might be a dog grooming business. You then link this fictional business to an Australian business number and ABNs. Step 2 is you then go to the MyGov site, access the ATO, and link that ABN to the GST system.
So that's registering for GST, is it?
Absolutely. From that point on, it's all easy.
So the third step is the really important one. This is how you get the money.
Absolutely. You can do the whole process just on your phone. It'll take about 120 seconds.
2 minutes.
2 minutes and you're there. So there are just 3 key numbers that you have to get right. And the first number is, how much sales have you had? The second number is, how much GST have you collected for the ATO? Third number, this is the big one, how much GST does the ATO owe you? Well, look, it's cost me 200 grand to set up my business here, my restaurant or my hairdressing business. So I paid about 19,000 GST there. Can I have that all back, please? And it was an entirely automated process. There's no need for an invoice, no need for receipts at this point.
So just so I'm clear here, you set up a fake business, you then register an ABN, and then you claim a huge amount of fictitious costs.
He's going to go and do it. He goes, hang on, I'm not going to go and do this. Can you just tell me again? Can you please repeat the key steps, which you've also told the whole country? Surely now they've put an end to this if they're not going to put this on the internet. Yeah, I'm just asking for a friend here. So hang on, it's fake business. We register our ABN and then we do a claim for costs that we never incurred. And for the most part, if we're not too dodgy, not that you can't be any more dodgy than this, but if we're not too dodgy, we don't push the barrier or the boundary too hard, and we're reasonable, we'll get that money without anyone looking into it. That actually is quite clever. It's ingenious. That's what it is. So someone's come up with that. So someone sitting in Mildura, sitting in the park punching darts, drinking Woodstocks, all right, bourbon and Coke, has come up with this idea.
For this business. And then within a couple of days, a couple of working days, the ATO gives you back a huge sum of money as a GST refund into your bank account, just like that. No verification needed, no documents at all.
Look, if you wanted to design a system that was going to be open to fraud, this is the one that you would choose. It's big money, fast.
There you go, but you also got to have a massive set of balls on you to do that. A huge amount of risk, risk tolerance, because at any moment they can find you, and they likely will find you at some point, and you're going to pay for it big time. They're going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. Like I did a video recently, guys. You can go back, it's about a week or so ago, about a gentleman who ran a wine type business, and the ATO came down on him because they thought that he was defrauding them and doing them out of tax revenue based on the products he was selling. They ruined his life. It put so much stress on him that a member of his family ended themselves, and another couple who were affiliated with his business, the husband died, and the wife is a nervous wreck who's lost a whole bunch of weight and is probably has a shortened lifespan due to the amount of stress they put on her. So, I don't know. It's hard to feel sorry for him.
The people that I was associating with at that time, they had done it and told me how easy it was to get a large amount of money quickly. And I just thought at the time it was a good idea because I was in a bit of financial trouble.
This single mother has asked not to be identified. We'll call her Sarah. She didn't hear about the scam on TikTok, but through a friend who offered to do it for her.
This is low IQ stuff, but once again, hey, it worked. They got the money. This probably debunks my theory about people having a high risk tolerance. They're probably not even pondering what the outcomes and the likelihood of them being caught and then the repercussions are.
And how much did you say you paid the person each time?
About $1,500 each time, yeah. So I think it was within 2 weeks that I had the money in my account.
Claiming to be a hairdresser, Sarah received almost $35,000 in GST refunds from the tax office over 2 payments.
Have you worked as a hairdresser previously?
No.
Sorry, let me put it this way. Was there any checking done to see if you had established a hairdressing salon?
No. None whatsoever. I don't even really still understand how it went through. I was a single parent, and then
I was a single mum, guys. It wasn't my fault. Come on, don't use that. I'm a single mum. I had to do it. Oh, and that's okay. It's okay. Look, she's a single mum. It's okay. Come on. All right, halfway, guys. If you're enjoying the content, please consider liking, commenting, and engaging. Let me know your thoughts on this story to date. It greatly helps my channel. YouTube has once again changed the way it provides creators with revenue. So the more engagement I get, the more you help me. All right, let's jump back into the show. I might skim a bit forward here. Let's move on.
He very quickly gets himself organised to be able to claim GST refunds from the ATO, and he does this through a fictitious earth-moving business this time.
Okay, so what's his first claim?
My reading of it is that he does basically a trial run. So he claims $13,158 in GST refunds from the ATO, and the crazy thing is, within 3 days, the ATO pays him, right?
Well, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty quick, isn't it? So no checks, no verification required for a guy that's just got straight out of jail.
Whoa. What's his next step?
A couple of weeks after that, he goes for the absolute mother load. He goes for the big one. So what he does is he lodges 46 BAS statements, and he backdates these to about January 2018. Most of that time, he's actually in jail. And what he claims is $821,000 in GST refunds from the ATO.
Wow, so hold on.
Well, looking like he's probably going to be back in jail. I don't think he really cares, and maybe he just wants his 3 square meals, and he'll give it a crack when he gets when he's out. Probably has no other opportunity.
Just looking at that kind of number, for 800 grand, to get that much, you'd have to claim costs. What, something like close to $10 million of costs that he claims to have spent while he's behind bars.
Yeah, exactly. He buys himself a second-hand Porsche, and he buys a house for his mother.
You'd have thought all of that backdating would be some kind of red flag. How long did it take for the ATO to think something's not quite right here?
So the really damning thing here is that the ATO very quickly realise that something's not right here. And they start emailing him, they start writing him letters, and he just fobs them off. And he manages to do this for about 4 months.
So how did he get caught?
Yeah, they pick him up by chance. Actually, it's the local police detective, Vanessa Powell, who actually wins a medal for her work. She goes to his house on an unrelated drug matter, searches his phone, finds evidence of this GST scam, and that actually leads them to 60 other offenders in this Mildura area. But the really key thing is here is this delay of 4 months. That is a crucial period where this GST scam is just exploding across the country.
Around the time Phillips was arrested in April 2022, the ATO launched Operation Protego. It would find that 57,000 people were in on this scam.
That is incredible. 57,000 people just not given a stuff. It's interesting, the psychology of humans, isn't it? That this guy, see, what he gets almost $1 million. Okay, he did an okay thing. He bought his mum a house. Obviously not his money. It's our money as taxpayers. Goes and buys a Porsche. So you perpetrate a huge fraud. Why don't you at least try and make that money last you? Like, be worth that risk? Just gone. Poof, up in smoke. Gone. Start going again. Get back into some other activities. Obviously doesn't care, but I find that very interesting. And people can't stop. So he got the 13,000, but then what do? He lodged another 40-odd claims. It's a certain personality type. It's like people who you hear about, they work in a bank and they steal a little bit of money, and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going to the point until they get caught. They would have gotten away with it, but there was that one time they slip up, they get a bit greedy. Busted. Human nature, just keep going, keep pushing that boundary. You feel like you're invincible or something.
So far, only 122 have been convicted, many of them from Mildura.
So Mildura was not a centre for offending. It was not an epicentre of offending in terms of this ATO tax scam. It was actually an epicentre for prosecutions.
And of the $2 billion stolen from taxpayers, only around 8% or $160 million has so far been recovered.
Alrighty, there we go, guys. So that could be hospitals, road, but all those billions of dollars. Could be hospitals, could be roads, it could be social housing, developed to help the most vulnerable, the homeless, halfway housing. Oh well, that's gone. Incredible. So we get taxed out our ass, and they have all these systems that can have holes just poked right through them. So they've got a leaky boat. They've got a bucket. They're trying to fill that bucket up and there's holes in the bottom. Bizarre. Well, let's move forward a little bit further. All right, let's go.
The ATO over a construction scam. It used fake invoices to claim GST refunds for building projects which either didn't exist or had been completed by other developers.
It never had any legitimacy. There's nothing in it that ever demonstrates any act of commerce or enterprise. It didn't create anything. It didn't manufacture anything. It didn't even provide anyone a service. The whole set of transactions, completely and utterly made up, fraudulent, had no basis.
Despite this, Ghazal and his associates managed to squeeze more than $21 million out of the tax office in GST refunds. By September 2023, the ATO had issued Ghazal with a $44 million tax bill, including penalty interest.
Once the money is released by the ATO into this sort of deception, it's very difficult to get back.
Now we can reveal, while the ATO was chasing him for that money, it failed to detect he was using a new string of companies to continue scamming the tax office.
That's incredible, isn't it? Just the gall. They're after you for $44 million. What does he go and do? Just keeps doing it and creating other phantom companies. Once again, they're not that well-resourced. How is all this stuff going under the radar? You've got so many people doing it. There's only so many people that work at the ATO. But maybe, I don't know, I'm taking a guess. I probably could Google it, like a couple of thousand, a few hundred. Who knows how many there are? How do they then deal with all the business tax, all this sort of stuff going on? Probably 20 million taxpayers, excluding children and people not working. How do they deal with all the fraudulent income tax returns that people put a bit of mayo on and claim things and all that? It's interesting that they have a lot of scrutiny over that. Someone goes and claims an extra pair of work pants or work boots or something like that for $200, and the ATO starts coming asking for receipts. But this sort of stuff just goes through to the keeper.
It's almost whack-a-mole. You think you've got one and he's off perpetrating it again. Our investigation started and it unravelled into a larger and larger GST fraud. That he's been the mastermind behind the creation, the maintenance of it and the milking of it.
Using fake directors, it's alleged Ghazal set up new companies with the help of relative strangers while ultimately controlling the money.
So in this particular fraud, we've got taxi drivers, we've got young mechanics in their mid-20s. It's sometimes difficult until after the event, when you see the bank statements and see where the money's moving, that these things can get exposed.
Stephen Hathaway has connected Ghazal to an additional 22 companies, which he says fraudulently claimed another $25 million in GST refunds. Once again, Ghazal was pretending to be a property developer.
There was not a building enterprise. Not one bag of nails was bought from Bunnings. There was no items ever spent on any building material.
And the tax office failed to carry out even the most basic checks.
We claim to be developing 2 buildings out in Liverpool and Blacktown. The whole thing was a complete and utter fabrication, a complete fraud from the beginning to the end.
Look at us do Google Maps even. Don't even need to go out there. I want to take an hour to go drive out there and have a look, see if it exists or not, if there is even a building site. Or Google Satellite, just to see. Interesting. I'm trying to find you the next story here. All right.
The fact that it keeps rising is troubling. So it's fundamental, I think, that we've got good administration of the tax system, because the integrity of the tax system is fundamentally important to all of us. It pays for all of the services that we benefit from.
The tax office is given extraordinary discretion to discount or waive debts. Last year it made 301 confidential settlements, writing off $880 million. Just how the ATO uses these powers to make settlements is never disclosed to the public or the Parliament. But there's one settlement we can tell you about.
You just never get to see behind the veil with the tax secrecy, right?
Well, yeah, you would never see the personal tax affairs of the PM.
Although in this case there is a bit of history.
Mr Keating was forced to admit to Parliament last night that he failed to lodge last year's tax return until this week, 15 months too late.
It was 1986 and Paul Keating was the Federal Treasurer, responsible for tax policy, when he failed to lodge his own tax return.
I fill my own returns in, and that means I've got to run around and find the receipts and the bills and get the forms and do the rest, and one tends to put it off, which is silly.
So for those who don't know and aren't from Australia, Paul Keating is a former Prime Minister of our country.
It was a very ordinary look, but he was such a compelling reformer and personality that he was able to just ride through those sorts of controversies.
How and by whom are your piggery companies being kept afloat?
Mr Speaker.
Controversy around Keating's tax affairs would follow him as Prime Minister and even after he left office. In 1998, he was forced to justify the sale of his shares in 2 piggeries, including lawful attempts to reduce the amount of tax paid.
You're accused today of minimising tax on the piggery deal when you sold your share.
Yeah, well, that is just completely wrong, Kerry. You know, the Commissioner's welcome to have a look at me any day of the week. My tax was lodged by KPMG. Journalists have been in touch with KPMG and they've told them that my tax affairs are completely A-OK.
Who does not actually want to minimise their tax? That's how the wealthy get around it, because they can go to take KPMG and EY and PwC and the many other firms that do that sort of thing. It's their business is how to do tax structuring and how to set it all up. How to set it all up in a way strategically that will result in a lower amount of tax. You know what? If I was a very wealthy person, I would use those services too. You know, I'll use those services too.
Well, Paul Keating was quite the entrepreneur. He's made tens of millions of dollars. He took a lot of risks. He's had a wide portfolio of interests from lobbying in China, Wall Street investment banks, piggeries, listed technology companies, mobile companies, property plays.
Keating's success in business brought with it renewed attention from the ATO. For the first time, Four Corners takes you inside the private negotiations between the companies controlled by the former PM and the tax office. We can reveal one of his companies agreed to a settlement for tax liabilities of more than $3 million in 2010.
What do we know about that, Neil? How was it resolved?
Well, at the time of the settlement, there was a great deal of negotiation. And as part of that negotiation, tax officers took Paul Keating through each of the companies and trusts that he had, and he was able to assure them that they had all been settled, they were all tax paid.
And was that the end of it?
Well, no. Late 2012, the tax office was contacting him again. They wanted to talk to him about his sale of Lake Technology shares back in 2004.
Lake Technology, a pioneer in headphone engineering, proved to be one of Keating's more successful investments. His company's initial $11,000 outlay grew to be worth more than $2 million, attracting
Take a look at that. The ATO wants a nice slice of that. All right, let's go and raid the coffers of Paul Keating. They're all like, this is a huge story at the moment. They're all about it. Where did the $1 million go that Paul Keating was supposed to be paying? It's sort of been negotiated backdoor deal. This is the story, but they're going to talk about this backdoor deal. But you got billions of dollars out there getting rorted. I'm not saying let Paul Keating off the hook. He should be under the same rules as everybody else. Not this negotiating or using political influence and all that sort of stuff, which I'm sure happens.
A hefty tax bill when it sold the shares.
Well, Paul Keating famously loved his classical music, and the founder of Lake Technologies went to see him and with his headphones to show off the technology using the Dolby system of how you could listen to music and it would be beautiful using the technology that Lake had. And Paul Keating was so impressed that he agreed to invest in the company before it floated.
Four Corners has learnt in 2012 the ATO discovered Keating's company had not paid $446,000 in tax from the sale of the Lake Technology shares.
All right, well, issue him a bill and off you go. Once again, worrying about small ship, this is what I'm talking about. This is the point that is small in comparison to these people doing that GST fraud. You got your single mums and your ex-crims out there getting millions of dollars. Hundreds of people doing it, hundreds of millions of dollars, and these huge companies pretending to be a property developer that doesn't exist, a Phoenix company or a Shell company. And they're putting all this effort and scrutiny on to get $400K. Go after the big bucks. But they probably can't. There's probably no way they can actually get that money back once it's out of the system, once it's in other people's bank accounts.
In response, it paid this tax, but it was 7 years late, and the ATO demanded penalties and interest.
He protested vigorously. He said this was an inadvertent mistake and an honest mistake. He really thought that the tax had been paid.
Yeah, it says here that it was a busy time for the former Prime Minister and that the transaction had faded inadvertently from the consciousness of PJK. And how long did the dispute go on for?
Well, the negotiations went back and forth for almost 3 years. And then in April 2015, the tax office tried to, draw a line in the sand, and they said that they issued a statement of demand that his company pay $953,000, which is what it had grown to in the meantime.
So almost $1 million in penalties and interest for failing to pay on time.
Yes, and it's at this point that we know Keating becomes directly involved in the negotiations.
Yeah, so the exchanges continue, and then suddenly the ATO's resistance melts. After 3 years of meetings and volumes of correspondence, Keating's told in a 4-line email that the debt has been wiped.
There you go. Maybe a few strings have been pulled. Good old PJK jumped on the phone. You never know. Called a few people or put a bit of pressure on them. Yeah, don't worry about that, PJK. It's $1 million. Don't worry about it. So they've been. But once again, as I said, how does that excuse stand up? If I was to say, oh, you know what, I was a sole proprietor. I decided I didn't pay tax for 10 years because it was a busy time for me and it faded from my consciousness. And I think I did pay it. So therefore, you're wrong. Just gaslight the tax office. You're wrong. This tax doesn't exist. Pretty sure they're not going to take that. They'll send debt collectors after me, make my life a living nightmare, probably garnish wages, garnish my bank accounts.
The request for remission has been reconsidered. Consequently, the balance of the account has been reduced to nil and the amount payable is no longer owed.
And just like that, his tax bill has gone to zero.
So in a 10-day period, the ATO went from demanding almost $1 million and just saying, you know what, don't worry about it. Actually, you don't need to pay that money anymore.
Yeah, of course, the thing to bear in mind is that there's nothing wrong with asking the tax office to have a second look at your tax bill. You can't fault Keating for trying to have his tax bill brought down.
Of course, I don't fault him at all. So, I've heard of people, I know people who are entrepreneurs, had small to medium businesses, and they may have done their tax incorrectly, not on purpose, but whatever it may be. They might have tried to do it themselves, or they didn't understand exactly what they were doing, and the tax office got wind of them. I can tell you now, guys, they are absolutely ruthless when it comes to people who have no power, no recourse, or funds to fight them. They will come after you. They'll come down on you like a ton of bricks, especially as a small business. There was somebody that I know on my network years and years ago. They used to run a small business out of their house. They didn't pay the right amount of tax. It was a mistake. They didn't really know what they were doing. Okay. Not saying it wasn't an error, but they didn't know what they were doing. They weren't trying to defraud the government. Anyway, they came down on them, and it was tens of thousands of dollars in the end after quite a long amount of time. That's a lot of money for any person, let alone a sole proprietor. And they made that person's life so hard they had to wind the business up and everything. But you get other people here getting away with defrauding them for tens of millions of dollars and all that. I'm not saying Paul Keating's committing fraud, but they let him off the hook. They let him off the hook if they were right or if they were wrong. Who knows? They could think that they're doggedly right. And we've also seen the ATO be wrong. Robo-debt, going after other businesses incorrectly for tax evasion. So who really knows? Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. You guys want to watch this, just a bit of my thoughts, a bit of my rant. Once again, guys, continue to like, comment, and all that sort of stuff. It really does help me. The channel's had a bit of growth recently in the short term, and I really appreciate that. So if you continue to support the channel, it's greatly appreciated. Thank you. See you in the next video.